Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to deconstruct one of the most beautiful and, honestly, paradoxical instruments ever created, the piano. It's this amazing box of wood, felt, and steel that somehow, against all physical odds, learns to sing. Okay, so let's dive right into this paradox. When you listen to a piano, you hear this continuous singing voice, right? It's capable of so much emotion. But what's actually happening? In reality, it's a percussion instrument. It's just a series of 88 hammers hitting strings, creating 88 distinct sounds that start dying the second they're born. So how is this even possible? How does this totally rigid mechanical system create this profound illusion of a fluid human melody? Well, that's the central mystery we're going to unravel today. It's this incredible contradiction between what the piano physically is and what our ears hear. To really understand the illusion, we first have to face the cold, hard facts of the machine itself. Our source material calls this its static nature. We're talking about the unchangeable laws of physics that the instrument has to obey. So, you can think of this static nature as the piano's rulebook. It's a set of rules that absolutely cannot be broken. They can only be worked around through some really clever artistic deception. And, these rules create some serious problems for any musician trying to make it sing. So here's the first fundamental problem. You see, unlike some perfect theoretical string you'd see in a physics textbook, a real piano string is actually pretty thick and stiff. And because of that stiffness, its overtones, those higher shimmering frequencies you hear inside each note, are just a little bit sharp. And get this physical flaw, it's called inharmonicity. Means that if you tuned a piano perfectly according to the math, it would actually sound awful. So to make it sound right, tuners have to use this brilliant workaround called the rails-back curve. They literally stretch the tuning, making the high notes a tiny bit sharper and the low notes a bit flatter. The amazing takeaway here is that the piano's signature warmth comes from being perfectly out of tune with itself. Crazy, right? Okay, so that's the physics problem. The second big issue is mechanical, and it's built right into the heart of how a piano works. It's this moment of total and complete disconnection between the player and the sound they're about to make. All right, let's break down this really clever mechanism called the escapement. So when you press a key, a whole chain reaction of levers pushes the hammer up towards the string. But, and this is the key part, just before it hits, a little piece called the jack slips away, or escapes. For that last tiny fraction of a second, the hammer is literally flying through the air on its own. And that right there, that is the core of the paradox. Once that hammer is in free flight, the pianist's job is over. The physical connection is totally severed. You can't change the tone, you can't add vibrato, you can't make the note swell like a singer can. All of your control is gone before the sound even exists. So when you think about these insane physical limits, the impure physics, and this mechanical disconnect, how do artists do it? How do they possibly create their magic and make this machine sing? Well, they do it by embracing what our source material calls the dynamic nature. This is the art of illusion. This is where the human element completely takes over, using creativity and skill to trick our ears and overcome the piano's rigid mechanical soul. The first, and probably the biggest illusion, is faking a connected singing line, what musicians call legato. And this is a massive challenge because every single note on a piano starts to die from the very moment it's born. A true seamless connection between notes is physically impossible. So the secret is this masterful technique called intoning. A truly great pianist isn't just playing the next note. They are listening intensely to the sound of the previous note as it fades away, and then they launch the new note with precisely the right force to match the exact volume of the decaying one. It creates this seamless handover of sound. It's an incredible illusion. The next illusion? Well, it involves literally bending time itself. This technique is called rubato. Mozart famously talked about it as keeping his left hand in perfect steady time, like an anchor, while his right hand melody just floated freely on top. But later on, composers like Chopin took it way further. The entire musical pulse starts to breathe, stretching and compressing like a human lung to build incredible tension and release. But, maybe the most powerful tool of illusion isn't controlled by the hands at all, but by the foot. The sustain pedal has been called the soul of the piano. And for good reason. It completely transforms the instrument's character from 88 separate points of sound into one giant vibrating ecosystem. And this is where we get the magic of sympathetic resonance. When that pedal lifts all the felt dampers off the strings and you strike just one note, other strings that are harmonically related start vibrating all on their own, in sympathy. This creates this complex, shimmering halo of sound around the original note, a richness that your fingers alone could never, ever produce. Okay, so we have the machine's problems and the artist's illusions. But some composers and performers, they didn't just solve the piano's paradox, they basically weaponized it. They pushed the instrument to its absolute physical and conceptual limits. I mean, take Leopold Godowsky. This guy took Frédéric Chopin's Etudes, which were already considered like the peak of difficulty for two hands, and he rewrote them to be played by the left hand alone. This forced a single, supposedly weaker hand to act like an entire orchestra, playing the bass, the chords, and the melody all at the same time. It's just mind-boggling. And then you jump to the 20th century and you get Giorgi Ligeti, who used the piano to create these brain-bending auditory illusions. He wrote music that sounds like it's rising in pitch forever, used these super complex, overlapping rhythms that just completely erase any sense of a steady beat. And he even created rhythms from the notes that aren't being played by having the pianist silently press down keys to create gaps in the sound. So after all of this, the physics, the mechanics, the artistic wizardry, what's the final, ultimate secret to making the piano sing? Where does the magic really, truly come from? Well, the legendary teacher Heinrich Neuhaus, who taught some of the greatest pianists in history, he revealed that the solution isn't in the hands at all. It's in the mind. He argued that the artistic image, the perfect, ideal sound, has to exist completely in the artist's imagination first. So ultimately, it comes down to this. A beautiful sound can't come out of the piano if it doesn't first exist as a clear, perfect idea inside the artist's head. All that physical technique, the fingers, the wrists, the arms, that's just the tool the mind uses to try and translate that perfect internal vision into our messy, imperfect physical world. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If the beautiful singing melody we hear from a piano is, in the end, a masterful illusion, it kind of begs the question, what's more perfect? The music that struggles to be born from this mechanical box, or the flawless version that exists only in the artist's mind? Maybe the real art of the piano isn't in the physical act at all, but in that beautiful, impossible struggle to make a machine dream.